So here we are then, finally, after months of wild speculation and rumours flying around the internet and social media, our very first sighting of Shimano's next generation Dura Ace Di2 group set. Actually spotted in the wild, in the pro peloton, being raced in Belgium very recently. Now, I'm only just allowed to share these photos with you, and these photos of the new group set, while they do answer some questions about the direction of the new group set, leave quite a few unanswered. So in this video, over the next few minutes, I'll share my reaction to these photos of the group set and my thoughts about what it means for this new group set. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, your reaction to the group set by leaving a comment down below. A smiley face, upset face, a thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever it is, let me know your thoughts. Whether you're delighted with what you see or you feel let down. Love to hear your thoughts as always. And if you're new around here and this is your first video you're watching on Just Ride Bikes, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Okay, let's dive in. Let's start with first impressions and looks. And while looks are subjective, I know they are important with a group set. Some people have a real preference for one group set over another, and some people choose group sets based on how they look more than the function or performance. And Dura Ace has a certain look. Now cast your mind back to 2016 when the current 9100 series group set launched, and it was a big shock from the previous 9000 series group set it replaced. This new group set though, which we can presume will be called 9200 series, looks very similar to the current group set. It's still mostly black, very similar shapes and profiles, so no radical change, no big departure from what we know and maybe love. Now that's either a good thing or bad thing, and depends on your view of current Dura Ace. You might be relieved it's very similar, so no big departure from that. You might be disappointed that you haven't taken it in a new direction and given us a real update, a real fresh new appearance. It's also worth stating at this point, this group set spotted on a Team DSM Scott bike is a pre-production group set. It won't be a prototype. The prototype will be tested in top secret, away from the public gaze, and only given to the pro teams for final assessment in the final months before the launch, presumably the Tour de France or the Tokyo Olympics. So the group set we're seeing in these photos will be very similar to what's actually launched. We can see they taped over the logos in some places, like on the cranks, but don't expect any major change in appearance based on what we're seeing now, just a very subtle tweak here or there. And I think we can read a bit more into what it means. I think for me it means the fact it's only a minor revision, both in how it looks and the naming, going from 9100 to presumably 9200, as many speculate, means that the current group set is pretty damn close to perfection. Now, if you have used a group set, I know many of you have, and I have done, it is pretty flawless, it has to be said. Great ergonomics, shift speed, good brakes, looks good, pretty low weight as well, and really reliable. So the fact this new group set is a minor revision, an evolution, rather than a radical ground-up redesign, probably shows how tough it was to improve on the current group set, that it is just a minor revision, a minor evolution, rather than anything more drastic. So quite interesting, kind of reading between the lines a little bit there, but let me know your thoughts down below. So moving away from looks to something a bit less subjective, we can now confirm it will be a 12-speed group set, as many of us expected and from the patterns we've seen already. Now, it's not clear if they're using the micro-spline free hub they developed for their mountain bike XTR group set, which allows the use of a smaller 10-tooth sprocket like we have on SRAM. I'm going with it being a regular 11-tooth cassette like we have now, and using the current HG free hub, because to me the lock ring looks the same as what we have on 11-speed and not what we have on microspline. So that, if that is the case, it's good news for people who want to upgrade and don't want to replace the free hub on their wheel or replace their wheels entirely. So upgrade to this new group set should be even easier. And that means they're using the same spacing for this new cassette. So they're squeezing 12 sprockets into a space of 11. So narrower sprocket and presumably a narrower chain as well. But how much narrower remains to be seen. But we're seeing 12 speed with SRAM and Campagnolo as well. So they can do it with a narrow chain that's reliable and as strong as 11 speed. So that shouldn't be an issue here at all. Unfortunately, these photos don't give us an indication of the ratios, but if it's 11.2 starting sprocket, I guess 11.30 will be the standard option. I expect, given the way cycling is evolving, we might see 11.32, 11.34 supported by Dura Ace, where previously it wasn't, it's Ultegra and below. The other big news here, of course, is there are wires attached to the front and rear mech, just like current 9100 series Dura Ace. Now, if you remember when SRAM was first prototyping its E-tap wireless group set, they actually did a really cool thing of putting some fake wires onto the bikes that were being raced at the time while they were testing the group set, and really misled many of the media. And then at the last moment, they whipped the wires off and revealed it to be a wireless group set. But I don't think that's the case here. All the patents we've seen so far suggest it's a semi-wireless group set. And to recap, what that means is, in the case of Shimano, and the same as that FSA Wii group set launched a few years ago, is the front and rear mech are wired to the internal frame battery, and then the shifters are wireless, so batteries inside the shifters, and they're wireless and separate from the front and rear mech system. Now, the reason behind this will become clear when it's finally launched, but my hunch is that it's all about battery life and keeping the front and rear mech as light and compact as possible. Now, SRAM put the batteries on each mech and it works really well. Really small batteries, easy to take off and charge up, but it does lead to bigger, chunkier and heavier derailleurs compared to what you can have when you take the battery off the mechanism and put it inside the frame. And Dura Ace has really good battery life, so maybe they preferred longer battery time and lighter and smaller front and rear mechs over having the convenience of a fully wireless system. The front and rear mechs look very similar to current Dura Ace, but they've clearly been on a diet. The rear mech in particular is much sleeker, and hopefully that means it's lighter as well. So weight improvements on the whole group set would be great to see. Get it down below 2 kilos for a disc brake group set would be pretty phenomenal. The front mech is smaller as well, and I'm sure with the front mech they tried to improve tyre clearance for the new generation of endurance bikes in particular, where wired tyres are becoming really popular and you're getting really high spec bikes with Dura Ace. So wired pros are still 25, 26, 28 sometimes. Most of us riding endurance bikes and even race bikes now are riding 30, 32 in many situations. So having more tyre clearance, especially if you're going off-road, like gravel, that will be a benefit as well. So I'm sure wider tyre clearance will be a factor for redesign of that front mech, although I could be totally wrong, of course, because it's all speculation at this stage. Moving to the hoods, the main contact points with the group set. Quite a few subtle changes here. The most immediate one is how the top of the brake lever is reset inside the body, and the top knobbing. Don't actually know what the technical name for that knob on top of the brake lever is that you wrap your hands around. Looks a bit smaller than current Dura Ace Di2, and perhaps that's for the wireless tech, the wireless gubbins inside there and the battery and so on. The base of the hood where it meets the handlebar looks a bit broader, and the middle seems to be pinching a bit more, and there's new ribbon material or ribbon shape which looks inspired by GRX. Now if you use GRX, especially Di2, you'll know the hoods are really ergonomic. They're ribbed rubber hoods. It's really difficult to keep a straight face when you're saying ribbed in a video like this. And the brake levers are reshaped as well, and it feels really good. And I remember riding that at the launch thinking, this on a road bike would be fantastic. So it looks like they brought some of that ergonomic design to Dura Ace as well. The paddles look a bit bigger on first inspection, but going back and forth between new and current pictures of Dura Ace, maybe not so much difference there. Slightly different texture material on the paddles itself as well. And what we can't tell from these photos is whether they're wireless, because the bike they're pitching on has a one-piece carbon handlebar and stem, where the brake hoses and the wires will be internal anyway, so we can't tell whether there's no wires attached to these shifters. And if there are batteries in there, like coin cell batteries like we have with SRAM, how do you access those? They underneath and the top remain to be seen. And then we move to the crankset. Now the crankset is a big deal with a group set. It's a jewel in a group set. It grabs the most attention of the bike. And I think it's fair to say, from these photos, this probably isn't a finished sample. Now it's still a 4-arm spider design with a super fat crank arm. It does look a bit more angular than before, and my guess it will be based on the same aluminium Holotech design as current Dura Ace, so no carbon, they're all about aluminium. Presumably the same 24mm spindle, compatible with most bottom brackets on the market as well. You can clearly see tape covering the logo as well, so the crankset will be the finished item. But what is odd is how the chainring meets the spider of the crankset. On current Dura Ace, the chainring and the way it attaches to the spider is one piece, so very seamless. But here we have separate attachments at the spider, which looks a bit half finished. So maybe they're still trying some different chain rings, maybe different chain ring ratios. So maybe that isn't quite a finished sample. So I wait to see what the actual production version looks like before I make a judgment on how the new crankset looks. But so far, so similar. Now, cast your mind again back to 2016 and the launch of 9100 series Dura Ace, and we saw for the very first time the introduction of Shimano's own dual-sided power meter. But the first reviews that came in weren't that good. The accuracy, consistency wasn't that good. And it's fair to say, in that time since, the power meter hasn't been that popular and prices are getting lower for power meters all the time. But last year, Shimano bought the Pioneer power meter business. So I reckon they've made a big upgrade to the power meter, and how they attach it to the crank is different. They relocated the pod from the side to the center, and presumably a big upgrade on the electronics, internals, and in the software, because the software is what's really important with a power meter. So I'm presuming it'll be dual-sided, a pod on each side for left and right power separation, ANT+, Bluetooth, all that sort of stuff. But it's the accuracy and consistency of the power meter that will be the key thing to look out for, and really critical to Shimano trying to get a real foot into this very lucrative power meter market, especially after now seeing many more bikes at low price points than before being spec'd with power meters. So far then, quite a few questions answered about brand new Dura Ace 9200, but also quite a few unanswered, namely brakes. So the photos here show a hydraulic disc brake group set, and we've not seen a picture of a ring brake version. That doesn't mean there won't be a ring brake version, but the only bike we'll likely see a ring brake version of a group set before launch will be Team Ineos. And as we all know, they're not really into disc brakes at all, they're all about rim brakes. So unless they use a prototype version of the new group set with rim brakes, we might have to wait till launch to find out whether Shimano is supporting rim brakes with this new group set. They did with the last group set. The way the market is going, it's all disc brakes, the way the manufacturers are going, and also speaking to brands who sell bikes to consumers, the sales of rim brake bikes are just plummeting through the floor. It's all about disc brakes. So it remains to be seen whether Shimano will support rim brakes. If they don't, is it a bad thing? Well, I'm sure you'll let me know down below. So what we see here in the photos are hydraulic disc brakes, and the pictures aren't that great because unfortunately all the pictures are on the drive side, so we don't have a real close-up picture of the brake caliper. But zooming in, the calipers do look very similar to the current calipers, maybe a slightly different shape. We have the same thin brake pads, and the rotors appear to be the XDR rotors, or a version of the XDR rotor adapted for Dura Ace, because we saw many pro teams switching from the Dura Ace brake rotors to the XTR mountain bike rotors because they're a bit lighter and they arguably look a bit better as well. The big question around the disc brake version of the group set is, have they improved some of the issues that are present with disc brakes, namely the clearance between the pads and the rotor? Can that be improved, increased for the time we're not braking, just to ensure there's absolutely no chance of rub or grit getting stuck in there? More adjustability, more adaptability for different preference in braking feel, and weight savings. I think weight savings will be the big news for the group set. Now we know disc brakes have a weight penalty in the region of 300 to 500 grams, depending on the specification of the group set, over rim brakes. So getting that weight penalty, or removing the weight penalty entirely, would be a big step forward, both in getting the weight of pro bikes down to that UCI weight limit and on a par with rim brake bikes, but also in the view of many of you consumers who want to buy a new bike, but may put off by the weight penalty of a disc brake bike. No, quite rightly, because weight can matter, and lots of people do worry about weight, even if it's just for bragging rights outside a cafe before a ride. So weight is a big question mark there. And the other big question is whether there will be a mechanical version of a group set. Now, all the pros using Shimano group sets use Di2 electronics. We're not seeing mechanical group sets used in any decent number in a long, long time. Only a few cases like Fabian Cancellara and Pete Sagan on some of the Cobble Classics preferred mechanical shifting over electronic shifting, but all the pros use Di2, so we won't see a mechanical version being used in a pro race. So that we'll have to wait until it's actually launched to find out whether Shimano is supporting mechanical shifting. If they do abandon mechanical shifting and go fully in with electronic shifting, will it be a bad thing? Well, maybe yes, because I love the way mechanical group sets feel, and Dura Ace mechanical is lovely to use. But all the test bikes I've had with Dura Ace in the last year have all had Di2, and that seems to reflect the way the market is going. The expectation or demand is for electronic group set being the future of road bikes, especially at the pointy end. Further down, where price is a bigger factor, maybe not so much, but at this level, it seems to be all about electronics, so that's a big question mark there. And the other big question, of course, is when is the group set actually launching? Well, I don't actually know, I'm not privy to that information, but I'm guessing it's either the Tour de France or the Tokyo Olympics, the latter being the obvious one, because in Japan, where Shimano is based, so that would be a good place to launch their new group set, their shiny new flagship group set. So to summarise all of this, I think it's fair to say, it's clear from the photos I've shared with you, that this new group set is a small evolution rather than a big revolution. There's clearly lots of similarities with the current group set in terms of how it looks, design, that fundamental technology on show. Still quite a few question marks over rim brakes, mechanical shifting, the weight of the disc brakes, the ergonomics, that power meter tech as well. But it probably shows how good the current group set is, that they've not gone for a radical redesign. They haven't scrapped that current group set and come up with something totally new. And that is kind of the Shimano way. They're quite a conservative company. They won't scrap something, they'll kind of build on these foundations, which is a smart approach. And it's probably the best Dura Ace group set there's ever been. There've been a long line of good group sets, a few duff ones perhaps, but this is pretty good and really shows evolution of 10, 20 years of group set technology development. And this new group set just seeks probably to just move on a small step rather than a big, big step. So 12 speed, hopefully lighter, improved ergonomics, better power meter. But is it enough? Is it enough in the current market? And that depends on your point of view. SRAM are being really aggressive with the new group sets, getting the price of electronics way down and doing some quite clever stuff with their gear ratios, which really suit a real world cyclist. And Dura Ace is clearly still aimed at the pros, even though most people actually buy it their own money, aren't pro riders, aren't racing at high level. So I'm not sure whether Shimano are still taking the right approach with developing the top end group sets compared to SRAM, where they are trying to also cater for the pros because they need to, because sports marketing is really important for bike manufacturers, but also recognising the needs of normal cyclists like you and I, who don't race, don't pin a number on our back, but want to go out and enjoy riding a high performance road bike and get up the hills and down the hills and have a fun time. I'm not sure whether Dura Ace is really taking the right approach into accommodating the way modern cycling is going. It's more akin to Campagnolo when they launched 12 speed. It was a very, very minor revision over 11 speed, no radical change in gear ratios in the same way as SRAM did. But maybe that's what you want. Maybe people want the tried and tested group set technology, but a small improvement here and there. But will it be enough for you to rush out and buy a new bike or a new group set when it comes out? Well, let me know your thoughts down below. Anyway, that's all for now. First look at Shimano Dura Ace Di2. Can't wait to see it finally launching. Must be pretty close now. Anyway, stay tuned to the channel for more hot scoops and my Instagram and Twitter as well. Links down below if you want to check those out. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button if you enjoy watching this. But that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all again next time.